Hi, welcome back. Today I thought I would do a little bit of a discussion video. I recently DNF'd a book and I was talking about it on my Insta stories and just had some thoughts that I thought I would share. So let's talk a little bit about DNFing. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term, it stands for do not finish. There might be a book that you're reading and you decide it's not for you, you choose to put it down and not finish it, hence DNFing. I guess the thing to talk about is what are some reasons that one might DNF a book? I know some people have a hard time with this, and I used to be this way where I would finish everything that I would read, but now I have so much on my plate I feel like it's honestly just not worth the time. So there are a few different reasons I might DNF something. Number one is if I'm just really not enjoying it. So sometimes there are books that I just think are not very good. I don't want to put myself through reading the entire thing. I'm not enjoying myself. I might choose to just put it down. Or there might be something that I find offensive or content that I find triggering. This doesn't happen that frequently, but sometimes it does, and I'll choose to put it down because of that. But the thing that kind of struck me, and I think this is maybe an interesting conversation to have in the community, especially with other people who are reviewers, is what do you do about books that are not objectively bad books, but just really aren't for you? Do you finish them and write a review that might be lower rated? Or do you just DNF it and say, this is not for me, I'm not the right reviewer for it, etc. And I think people probably take different stances on this. I found, and this is partly based on something that happened to me recently, which I'll talk about in a minute, but I found that for me, often what I'll do is the latter, where if I'm reading something and I'm like, this isn't a bad book, I see why other people might like this, but I'm really not enjoying it, sometimes I'll DNF it. In case anybody is wondering, I will typically give a book about 100 pages, or if it's an ebook, 30%, to, unless it's something just horribly offensive, but that's super rare. So usually I'll read a good chunk of the book before I'll decide whether to put it down. So last month I had agreed to do a buddy read with a friend of mine, Sassy Ginger Book Obsession, and we were gonna read Seafire by Natalie C. Parker, which I no longer have, so I'll put a picture here if you guys are wondering what the book looks like. And this is a book that I picked up on the recommendation of one of my local booksellers. And it's interesting because I think this has told me a lot about how I should be true to myself and what I know to be my taste. I had not been planning on picking up Seafire. So Seafire is a YA fantasy, I guess, with female pirates. It has got themes of sisterhood and kind of some steampunk elements. So in theory, it sounds really cool. Here's the thing that I know about myself. I tend not to prefer books set on ships. It's just not a trope I enjoy. In theory, pirates sound really cool, and there are definitely exceptions to that, but frequently, I'm just not that into it. And there are people who are. There are people who are super into books set on ships. It's not something that resonates super well with me. So I probably should have known going in that this would not be the book for me. I was not planning on reading it. I was at my local bookstore and my bookseller, who knows me because I'm in there frequently, asked me if I had read Seafire, and I said, no, I don't think I'm going to. I'm not that into books about pirates and ships. And she was like, oh, but it's so good. You have to read it. It's not like a normal book set on a ship. It's got other cool elements and it's techie and steampunk and it's so great. And she just talked it up and was like, no, really, you should read it. And I was like, okay, there was a half-price copy of it, so I decided to go with it and pick it up. And guys, is it a little bit different? Sure. Is it different in ways that made me like it? No. Not particularly. And the thing is it's not a bad book. It's by any means. It's a perfectly good book. And I can definitely see why there are people who have been loving it and raving about it. I think that's valid, which ultimately is part of why I chose to DNF it. And I gave it a while. I read half of the book, guys. Even though, because I just really wanted to give it a good chance. And this is the thing that happened, is there would be bits of the book where I was like, ooh, I'm really interested in this. Tell me more about that. They're at a seaport village and there's political intrigue, and I was like, oh, this is cool, I want more of this. And then like a chapter later it's over and they're back on the ship and they're like running away, and I'm like, but I don't care how you're like escaping from other ships through these like narrow channels. Like, that is just not what I'm interested in. It's not what I like to read. So I like what the book is doing in theory. I like the themes of sisterhood. I like the diversity of the book. And I can definitely see why this would be a great book for people. But for me, I found myself halfway through the book thinking like, I am just mostly not enjoying this. I'm going to end up wanting to give it 2.5 stars, and I don't think it really deserves 2.5 stars in terms of how good a book it is. So it is just not fair for me as a reviewer, in my opinion, to review this book. Plus, I was just not enjoying it, and I was like, you know, I have limited time, let me read something else. So that's what I did. And I'm passing the book along to somebody that I think probably will enjoy it because, like I said, it's not a bad book. So this just kind of got me thinking. And so talk to me in the comments down below and let me know any of your guys' thoughts on this. My feeling is, if there's a book that I think is a good book, that there's a good audience for, but I'm not enjoying it to the point that I'm going to want to give it below 3 stars, I feel like maybe I should just DNF it, because I don't know that that's super helpful. But I'm okay with getting on here and talking about it because, you know, maybe there is somebody who would be really into it. There's definitely an audience for this book. In fact, my friend Melissa, who over at Sassy Ginger Book Obsession, who I was supposed to be buddy reading this with, was really into it. She really liked it. But the thing is too, she's into ship books. She's into pirates. She's into books in those kinds of settings. It's sort of like, I read and reviewed Daughter of the Pirate Queen, and I think it was another one that I gave like 2.5 stars. I just wasn't that big of a fan of it. And so I've been learning through that process that like, okay, so maybe if there's books that are primarily about ships or set on ships, I just shouldn't read them. There are exceptions. I did read the sequel to The Lies of Locke Lamora, even though a good chunk of it is set on a ship, but enough of it is on land that I still enjoyed it. I think I did give it like 4 stars rather than 4.5 stars, so I rated it a little bit lower than Lies of Locke Lamora, probably because there was so much of like the shipboard stuff on it that I just find really dull, even though I know some people are super into it. But with that one, there was enough political intrigue, there was enough interesting character dynamics, there was enough set on land that I was into that I enjoyed it and it was worth me reading. So yeah, what do you guys think about this? And I guess another question worth asking as a reader is, what tropes do you like and do you not like? Because I think this is the thing too. Everybody has tropes that really work well for them and tropes that don't work so well for them. And I think it's a process figuring out what those are, but maybe if we can figure it out, we can be more efficient in selecting the books that we want to read, that we want to review, and do a better job of picking books that we actually will like. I do know there are people who will purposefully go read books that they know they're not going to like to review. I don't really enjoy doing that. Like, I would much rather enjoy most or all of what I'm reading, even if it means that I end up giving more books higher ratings. Yeah. Anyway, I do DNF books regularly. I would say on average 1 to 2 books a month. I don't always remember to talk about them in my wrap-ups. I don't know if I should. I don't always track it super well either, which is maybe part of the problem. Hopefully this was interesting or thought-provoking. Talk to me in the comments down below. I'm really curious to hear your guys' take on this. And for the question of the day, let me know, what are your feelings on DNFing? Is it something that you do? In what cases would you do it? Also feel free to talk to me about pirates and ships, and if you feel the way that I do, or if you're a big fan, because I know like there is such an audience for that. I'm just discovering that I am not one of them, unfortunately. Yeah, it's something that's been on my mind, so I wanted to share and chat with you guys. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.